Chapter 5 Birth of the Virgin Mary 26th of August, 1944. I see Anne coming out of the garden. She is leaning on the arm of a relative who is like her. She is obviously several months pregnant, and she looks tired, and her fatigue is not alleviated by the sultriness, just as this present heat is exhausting me. Joachim is working round the rows of vines and olive trees. There are 2 men with him helping him. Although an elderly man, he is quick and works eagerly. They are opening little channels at the end of a field to give water to the dry plants, and this water makes its way gurgling between the grass and the dry land. The flow forms circles that for one moment resemble a yellowish crystal, and seconds later are only rings of wet soil around the overloaded vine branches and the olive trees. Along the shady pergola, under which golden bees are buzzing, greedy for the sugar of the golden grapes, Anne moves slowly towards Joachim, who hastens towards her as soon as he sees her. "You came so far? The house is as hot as an oven, and you suffer from it." The only suffering of this last hour is that of a pregnant woman. The natural suffering of everybody, man and beast. Don't get too warm, Joachim. The water we have been hoping for such a long time, and that for fully 3 days seemed so close, has not yet come, and the country is parched. We are lucky to have a spring so near and so rich in water. I have opened the channels. It is a measure of relief for the plants which have withering leaves and are covered with dust, just enough to keep them live. If it would only rain. Joachim, with the eagerness of all farmers, looks at the sky, while Anne, tired, cools herself with a fan that seems to be made of the dry leaf of a palm, interwoven with many-colored threads, keeping it firm. Anne's companion interrupts. "Over there, beyond the great Hermann, vast clouds are arising. There is a northern wind. It will refreshen and perhaps bring rain. The breeze has risen for 3 days, and then it sets when the moon rises. It will do the same." Joachim is discouraged. "Let us go back home. Even here one can hardly breathe, and in any case I think it is better to go back," says Anne, who looks more olive-hued than usual, owing to a paleness which has come over her face. "Are you in pain?" "No, but I can feel the great peace that I experienced in the temple when I was granted the grace, and which I felt once again when I knew I was pregnant. It is like an ecstasy, a sweet sleep of the body while the soul rejoices and calms itself in a peace that has no bodily parallel. I have loved, and still do love you, Joachim, and when I entered your house and I said to myself, 'I am the wife of a just man,' I had peace, and I felt the same every time your provident love took care of your Anne. But this peace is different. Understand, I think that the soul of our father Jacob was invaded by a similar peace, like the soothing given by oil that spreads and appeases after he dreamt of the angels. And possibly more accurately, it is like the joyful peace of the Tobias after Raphael appeared to them. If I absorb myself in this feeling, it grows more and more in strength while I enjoy it. It is as if I were ascending into the blue spaces of the sky. And furthermore, I don't know the reason for it, but since I have had this peaceful joy in me, I have a song in my heart. Old Tobias' song. I think it was written for this hour, for this joy, for the land of Israel that receives it, for Jerusalem's sinner and now forgiven. But do not laugh at the frenzy of a mother, but when I say, 'Thank the Lord for your wealth, and bless the God of centuries, that he may rebuild his tabernacle in you,' I think that he who will rebuild the tabernacle of the true God in Jerusalem will be this one who is about to be born. And I also think that the destiny of my creature was prophesied, and not the fate of the holy city when the song says, "You shall shine with a bright light. All the peoples of the world will prostrate themselves before you. The nations will come bringing gifts. They will worship the Lord in you and will hold your land as sacred, because within you they invoke the great name. You will be happy on account of your children, because they will all be blessed, and they will gather near the Lord. Blessed are those who love you and rejoice in your peace. And I am the first to rejoice, her happy mother." They make haste, because clouds driven by a strong wind rush across and gather in the sky, while the plain darkens and shudders at the warning of a storm. When they reach the threshold of the dwelling, a first livid flash of lightning crosses the sky, and the rumble of the first peal of thunder sounds like the roll of a huge drum that mingles with the arpeggio of the first drops on the parched leaves. They all go in, and Anne withdraws, while Joachim, standing at the door, talks with the workers, who have in the meantime joined him. The conversation is about the longed-for water, which is a blessing for the parched land. But their joys turn into fear, because a very violent storm is approaching with lightning and clouds threatening hail. "If the cloud bursts, it will crush the grapes and the olives like a millstone. Poor me!" Joachim is also anxious for his wife, whose time has come to give birth to her child. His relative reassures him that Anne is not suffering at all, but he is agitated, and every time his relative or any other woman, amongst who is Alphaeus's mother, comes out of Anne's room and goes back in again with hot water and basins and linens dried near the blazing fireplace in the large kitchen, he goes and makes inquiries, but he does not calm down despite their reassurances. Also, the lack of cries from Anne worries him. He says, "I am a man, and I have never seen a child being born, but I remember hearing that the absence of throes is fatal." It is growing dark, and the evening is preceded by a furious and very violent storm. It brings torrential rain, wind, lightning, everything except hail, which has fallen elsewhere. One of the workers notices the ferocity of the gale. "It looks as if Satan has come out of Gehenna with his demons. Look at those black clouds. You can smell sulfur in the air, and you can hear whistling and hisses and wailing and cursing voices. If it is him, he is furious this evening." The other worker laughs and scoffs. "A great prey must have escaped him, or Michael has struck him with a new thunderbolt from God, and he has had his horns and tail clipped and burnt." A woman passes by and shouts, "Joachim, it is coming, and it is happening quickly and well," and she disappears with a small amphora in her hands. The storm drops suddenly, after one last thunderbolt that is so violent that it throws the three men against the side wall, and in front of the house in the garden, a black smoky cavity remains as its memory. Meanwhile, a cry, one resembling the tiny plea of a little turtle dove that for the very first time no longer peeps but coos, is heard from beyond Anne's door. And at the same time, a huge rainbow stretches its semicircle across the sky. It rises, or seems to rise, from the top of Hermon, which, kissed by the sun, looks like a most delicate pinkish alabaster. It rises up in the clear September sky, and through an atmosphere clean of all impurities, it crosses over the hills of Galilee and the plain to the south, and over another mountain, and seems to rest the other end on the distant horizon, where it drops from view behind a chain of high mountains. "We have never seen anything like this. Look, look! It seems to enclose in a circle the whole of the land of Israel. And look, There is already a star in the sky while the sun has not yet set. What a star! It is shining like a huge diamond. And the moon over there is a full moon, 3 days early. But look how she is shining. The women arrive jubilant with a plump little baby wrapped in plain linens. It is Mary, the mother. A very tiny Mary who could sleep in the arms of a child. A Mary as long at most as an arm, with a little head of ivory dyed pale pink. Her tiny carmine lips no longer cry, but are set in the instinctive act of sucking. They are so small that one cannot understand how they will be able to take a teat. Her pretty little nose is between 2 tiny round cheeks, and when they get her to open her eyes by teasing her, they see 2 small parts of the sky, 2 innocent blue points that look but cannot see between the thin, fair eyelashes. Also, her hair on her little round head is a pinkish blonde, like the color of certain honeys which are almost white. This is the most beautiful little heart the world will ever know, the only immaculate heart of a human being. She, the pure and chaste one, protests with a little cry at being thus exposed to the eyes of so many. She, entirely virgin, the holy and immaculate, whom no man will ever see nude again, protests. Cover, do cover this bud of a lily which will never be opened on earth, and which, still remaining a bud, will bear its flower, even more beautiful than herself. Only in heaven the lily of the trine Lord will open all its petals, because up there is no particle of fault that may unwillingly profane its spotlessness, because up there the trine God is to be received in the presence of the whole Empyrean, the trine God that within a few years, hidden in a faultless heart, will be in her, Father, Son, Spouse. Here she is again, in her linens, in the arms of her earthly father, whom she resembles. Not at the moment. Now she is just a little human baby. I mean that she will be like him when she has grown into a woman. She has nothing of her mother. She has her father's color of complexion and eyes, and certainly also his hair. His hair is now white, but when he was young it was certainly fair, as one can tell from his eyebrows. She has her father's features, made more perfect and gentle, being a woman, but that special woman. She has also the smile, the glance, the way of moving and height of her father. Thinking of Jesus, as I see him, I find Anne has given her height to her grandson and her deep ivory color to his skin. Mary, instead, has not the stateliness of her mother, a tall and supple palm tree, but she has the kindness of her father. Also, the women are speaking of the storm and the unusual state of the moon, of the presence of the star and the rainbow. Along with Joachim, they enter the happy mother's room and give her her baby. Anne smiles at one of her thoughts. She is the star, she says. Her sign is in heaven. Mary, Arch of Peace. Mary, my star. Mary, pure moon. Mary, our pearl. Are you calling her Mary? Yes, Mary, star and pearl and light and peace. But it means also bitterness. Are you not afraid of bringing her misfortune? God is with her. She belongs to him before she existed. He will lead her along his ways, and all bitterness will turn into heavenly honey. Now be of your mummy for a little longer before being all of God. And the vision ends on the first sleep of Anne, a mother, and Mary, an infant. 27th of August, 1944. Jesus says to me, "The Supreme Mind that knows everything before man existed knew that man would be a thief and self-murderer. And as the eternal goodness has no limit in being good, before guilt existed, he thought of the means to obliterate guilt. The means? I, the Word. The instrument to render the means of an efficient instrument? Mary. And the Virgin was created in the sublime mind of God. Everything was created for me, beloved Son of the Father. I, King, should have had under my divine royal feet carpets and jewels such as no royal palace had, and songs and voices and servants and ministers around me as no sovereign ever possessed, and flowers and gems, all the sublime, the greatness, the kindness that may derive from the thought of a God. But I was to be flesh as well as spirit, flesh to save the flesh, flesh to sublime the flesh, taking it to heaven many centuries before its time. Because the flesh inhabited by the Spirit is God's masterpiece, and heaven had already been made for it. In order to become flesh, I needed a mother. To be God, it was necessary that the Father was God. Then God created his spouse and said to her, "Come with me. At my side, see what I am doing for our son. Look and rejoice, eternal Virgin, eternal Maiden, and may your smile fill this empyrean and give the angels their starting note and teach paradise celestial harmony. I am looking at you, and I see you as you will be, immaculate woman, who are now only a spirit, the spirit in which I rejoice. I am looking at you, and I give the sea and the firmament the blue of your eyes, the holy corn the color of your hair, whiteness to the lily, and a rosy color to the rose, like your silky skin. I copy the pearls from your minute teeth. I make the sweet strawberries watching your mouth, and I give the nightingale your notes and the turtle doves your weeping. And reading your future thoughts and listening to the throbs of your heart, I have the motive of guidance in creating. Come, my joy, have the worlds as a plaything, as long as you will be the dancing light of my thought. Have the worlds for your smile, have wreaths and necklaces of stars. Place the moon under your gentle feet. Make Galatea your stellar scarf. The stars and planets are for you. Come and enjoy looking at the flowers that will be a childish joy for your baby and a pillow for the son of your womb. Come and see sheep and lambs, eagles and doves being created. Stay beside me when I make the hollows of the seas and grooves of the rivers, and I raise mountains and adorn them with snow and forests. Stay here while I sow fudders and trees and vines, and I make the olive tree for you, my peaceful one, and the vine for you, my vine branch, who will bear the Eucharistic bunch of grapes. Run, fly, rejoice, my beauty. And may the universe which is created hour by hour learn from you to love me, my love. And may it become more beautiful owing to your smile, mother of my son, queen of my paradise, love of your God. And again, seeing the fault and admiring the faultless one, come to me, you who wipe out the bitterness of human disobedience, of human fornication with Satan, and of human ingratitude. I will take with you my revenge over Satan. God, the Father Creator, had created man and woman with such a perfect law of love that you cannot even understand its perfection any longer. And you become lost in wondering how the human species would have come to be if man had not been taught by Satan how to obtain it. To man and woman corrupted by Satan, God decided to oppose the man born of a woman, whom God had super-sublimed to such an extent that she generated without knowing man, a flower that generates a flower without the need of seed, by a unique kiss of the sun on the inviolated chalice of the Lily Mary. The revenge of God. Hiss, O Satan, your hatred while she comes into the world. This child has beaten you. Before you were the rebel, the twister, the corrupter, you were already beaten, and she was your conqueror. 1,000 assembled armies are of no avail against your power. The arms of men fall before your scales, O perennial one, and there is no wind capable of dispersing the stench of your breath. And yet, the heel of this child, which is so rosy as to look like the inside of a rosy camellia, and is so smooth and soft that silk seems coarse in comparison, and is so small that it could enter the chalice of a tulip and make itself a tiny shoe with that vegetable satin. That heel is crushing your head without any fear and relegates you to your den. And her cry causes you to flee away, although you are not afraid of armies. And her breath purifies the world of your foul smell. You are defeated. Her name, her look, her purity are a lance, a thunderbolt that pierces you and demolishes you and imprisons you in your den in hell, O cursed one, who deprived God of the joy of being the Father of all men created. In vain you have corrupted them, who had been created innocent, leading them to knowledge and conception by means of the sensuousness of lust, depriving God and his beloved creature of being the benefactor of the children according to rules, which, had they been respected, would have kept a balance on earth between sexes and races, a balance capable of averting wars between peoples and calamities between families. By obeying, they would have also known love. Nay, only by obeying, they would have known love and possessed it, a complete and peaceful possession of this gift from God, who from the supernatural descends to the inferior, so that also the flesh may rejoice devoutly, since it is united to the Spirit and created by him who created the Spirit. The Virgin's virginity. Come, contemplate this deep virginity that gives ecstatic dizziness in its contemplation. What is the poor and forced virginity of a woman that no man married? Less than nothing. What is the virginity of a woman who wanted to be a virgin to belong to God, but is so in her body and not in her spirit, where she allows alien thoughts to enter and entertains allurements of human thoughts? It is a sham virginity, but still very little. What is the virginity of a cloistered nun who lives only for God? Very much. But it is never the perfect virginity when compared with my mother's. There has always been an association, also in the Most Holy One, the original association between spirit and fault, the one that only baptism dissolves. It dissolves it, but as in the case of a woman separated from her husband by his death, it does not render virginity complete, such as it was in the first parents before sin. A scar remains and hurts, causing one to remember it, and it is always ready to become a sore, like certain diseases that periodically are made worse by their virus. In the Virgin, there is no sign of this dissolved association with the fault. Her soul appears beautiful and intact as when the Father conceived her, gathering all graces in her. She is the Virgin. She is the only one. She is the perfect one, the complete one, conceived as such, generated as such, remained such, crowned such, eternally such. She is the Virgin. She is the acme of intangibility, of purity, of grace that is lost in the abyss from which it emerged. In God, most perfect intangibility, purity, grace. That is the revenge of the God trine and one. Against creatures desecrated, he raises this star to perfection. Against pernicious curiosity, he raises this coy virgin, contented only with loving God. Against the science of evil, this sublime innocent virgin. In her, there is not only no knowledge of dejected love, there is not only non-acquaintance with the love that God has given to married people, much more. In her, there is the absence of incentives, the inheritance of sin. In her, there is only the icy and white-hot wisdom of divine love, a fire that strengthens the flesh with ice, so that it may be a transparent mirror at the altar where God married a virgin, and does not lower himself because his perfection embraces her perfection, which, as it becomes a bride, is only inferior to his by one point, subject to him as a woman, but without fault as he is.